Hello everyone. Today I will be talking about the speed of RealWorld Paint. I've been working on this for 3 weeks all the time from the last stream, and all the updates are not yet completed. There will be more updates in the following weeks, but let me show you what has changed since the last build. You can download the current build from the homepage of RealWorld Paint via the small link under the main download link, as usual. I have only uploaded RealWorld Paint this time because this build is quite unstable. Some things are not working that were working before because I had to modify almost not every filter or not every effect, but a lot of them, and that means that there are new bugs. Some things may not work, but I will fix them during the weeks, during the next months. So these are 3 test images. Let's start with this largest one. This is an image I have downloaded from, I think, Flickr or something, some other website, and it's a 50 megapixel image, 8688 pixels time almost 6000 pixels. As you can see, this the current zoom level is 14%, and when I switch to 100%, you can see that it's pretty large image. But today's cell phones and digital cameras can produce such large images. So, because the future version of RealWorld Paint should focus on layer styles and not destructive editing, that means that the effects are applied on the fly. It is quite important that the application of the effect is fast, because nobody wants to wait half a minute when they make changes to the image to see the changes. So I have used this colorize filter as my test filter. So let's activate it, and let's compare the speed of this build with the last one. This is the last one. Open the same image and apply the colorize filter. You can see that when I click here, that it takes almost 1 second to update the image, and here it's almost instant. When I drag instead of clicking, I'm dragging this selection, you can see that the updates are quite fast, and considering that this is a 50 megapixel image, it's usable. When I try the same here, you can see that the changes in the colors are not as fast. So what have I done to improve the speed of the colorize filter? First thing that I have done is I now use multiple processor cores when I'm applying this filter. You can actually control these settings in the application options. So there is a new tab called Performance, and here you can set the maximum number of cores that RealWorld Paint should use. The default value is 0, and that means that all the cores on your CPU are used. And here you can see that my CPU has 6 cores and no hyperthreading. I have set this value to 5 because I am streaming, and capturing the screen and encoding takes some processing power, so I don't want to interfere with the recording software when I'm running this demonstration. This checkbox here allows me to enable or disable monitoring the speed of certain parts of the application, and when it is enabled, then you may sometimes find this section in the status bar that displays some statistics information. So when I right click on it, I can choose right now just from 2 settings because only these 2 are currently monitored. More will be added in the future. So this one, redraw canvas, measures the time it takes for the image canvas to be completely redrawn. The second one only measures how much time it takes to apply a layer style and then read the resulting image. It means that the time it takes to rescale the image and display it on the screen is not included. So this one allows me to measure the performance of the individual layer styles. You can test it yourself if you are interested. Some of the styles are already updated and are able to use multiple processor cores. Some of them are not yet updated. In general, the simpler effects that do not require, how to say it best, when I want to compute a value of single pixel here somewhere in the image, then there are 2 possibilities. I either need just 1 pixel from the source image, or I may need multiple pixels from the source image to compute the single resulting image. So the simpler filters and effects only require the value of the single pixel, and these are easy to parallelize. So colorize is one of them, and in general other effects that manipulate the, for example, this one, the brightness, contrast. These are relatively simple to implement and split the image into, in this case, 5 parts, because I have set to use maximum number of 5 cores. So the image is split into 5 regions, and each core applies the effects in one of the regions. The other effects, like for example drop shadow or bevel, this contour gradient and others, are not so easy to parallelize, because the splitting of the image is not so trivial, and there are some overlaps that must be handled correctly. So I think I have already created a faster version of bevel, but the other filters are not yet updated. So that's this. Okay. Now let me show you the speed on this slightly smaller image. This is a 12 megapixel image, and when I use colorize here, that you can see that it's completely, it doesn't slow you down at all. So 12 megapixels is a typical good quality photo, and you can use RealWorld Paint to non-destructively edit these pictures. So is there a possibility to be even faster than RealWorld Paint is today? Well, yes and no. RealWorld Paint doesn't use image tiles, and it uses just one large tile for each layer, because it is easier to implement or program the algorithms when you are able to access the image, the whole image, in the same way. On the other hand, Photoshop and GIMP, they split their images into tiles, and you can see when I apply colorize in the GIMP on the same image, then when I change the parameters, the color, the hue, you can see that it is updating the canvas using not all at once, but using these smaller tiles. Photoshop was probably the first editor that used tiles in the old days, and it was not to make it faster. In the old days, computers had relatively small amount of memory, and it was, if you had a large photo, and when I'm saying large photo, I don't mean this 50 megapixel photo, because that was completely outside of the capabilities of the old computers. You had, for example, 4 megabytes of memory, not 4 gigabytes, but 4 megabytes, and this 50 megapixels photo, when it is stored in memory, takes 200 megabytes of memory. So on a computer with just 4 megabytes, you were unable to have this image in memory, and so Photoshop stored large images on the hard drive and loaded only small parts of them, applied an effect on this small part, then saved this processed part, loaded another part of the image, applied the effect, and so on. So it was able, on a very old unlimited computer, work with large images. And these days, this is not the main reason why it still uses tiles and why the GIMP uses tiles to store the image. These days, the tiles allow these applications to use multiple cores to work on the image, because you have already the image separated into isolated regions, and you just take the tiles and split them according to the number of cores you have, and each core just processes some tiles. And you can see how the GIMP, you can probably see how large the tiles are and how it is starting to process the image, and it is able to cancel the processing when the parameter changes before the processing is complete. And when I start Task Manager, and you see how much CPU is GIMP able to use. So this is 6 cores, and it is using approximately, I would say, 4 cores. Not all tasks that it is doing are using multiple cores, so this is an average. So it is able to use multiple cores, I would say, natively when it stores the image as tiles. But as you can see, the speed is very comparable. I would even say that the update speed in RealWorld Paint is slightly faster in the new RealWorld Paint. You can see it's not the same image. This one is larger, but I would say that the speed is at least the same as in the game, probably even faster. It takes on my computer on average 130 milliseconds to apply the effect and read the buffer. So can we go faster? Maybe we can. Let me tell you what the software does when you change the parameter of the effect of the layer style. So the source image is stored as 200 megabytes of memory, in 200 megabytes of memory as RGBA pixels, and the computer needs to read each pixel, do some computation to change its color, and then it needs to write the pixel back to the memory. Because this takes those 200 megabytes and doesn't fit into the cache of the CPU, the speed of the memory is the main limiting factor for the processing speed. So we have to read 200 megabytes and then we have to write 200 megabytes. The writing is slightly more complicated than it should be due to the CPU cache. When the CPU wants to write something into write the processed pixel, the cache first reads the old content of the memory. It reads 32 bytes. Sorry, I can't. One moment.
Máte toho nějakou velkou část?
Sorry about that. I'm back. So I was talking that saying that the limiting speed for the colorize filter is the speed of your memory, and the writing is actually more difficult than it should be. When I write 4 bytes, that is 1 pixel, the CPU reads 32 bytes into cache and then overrides the 4 bytes. And this is not optimal. What we would want is to not read the old content of the memory, because we are not interested in what was in the memory before. Unfortunately, the CPU, it is not easy to convince the CPU that it should not do this. If you want to do that, you actually have to write the whole 32 bytes using some newer extensions to the CPU, and I don't want to optimize for this right now. So it takes 3 accesses, 2 reads and 1 write to process 1 pixel. So there is room for improvement in this, but it requires working on a very low level. Then there is one more thing that can be done. Right now, when the colorize filter is applied, the result is written into memory, and after that, when the canvas is being drawn to the display, the whole image, this large image is copied, and that means that it is again reading and writing the data. So if we can somehow eliminate this copy, then we can save a lot of time. It could be maybe twice as fast as it is now. In case where more than one effect is applied, there could be another optimization that can be done, but it requires the tiles that are used in the GIMP and in Photoshop. And in that case, if we have one small tile and we apply one layer style on this tile and immediately apply another layer style if you have multiple steps, then this one tile does not need to be written into the main memory of the computer, but it can remain in the cache, and therefore we save the read and write from the main memory. So there is still room for optimization, and maybe in the future this will be even faster. Okay. So I wanted to mention one more thing, and that is a new layer style. It is not completed, but I can show you what it does. Here is a new layer style. It's called offset object, and when I apply it, it has one parameter, and when I change it, it grows the shapes in a vector image. This layer style can only be applied to vector layers because it works with vector images. It only works when you have the layer style selected. It does not work when I click here back on the vector layer because it will work, but it doesn't work right now, because when I have this layer selected, only styles that work with raster images can be displayed. That is because when this layer is selected and a change is made, it tries to only update a rectangle where the change was made, and it needs this rectangle as a raster image, not as vectors. So this is the first layer style that is able to work directly with vectors, but it needs more work till it's usable. And of course, you won't be able to use it with raster layers. So you can also use negative values, and it shrinks your objects. Currently it only works with shapes. But it will work with other kinds of objects. It will eventually work with text, rectangles, ellipses, and so on. Okay, are there any questions related to these topics? So I have mentioned this performance tab in the application options, where you can control how many cores the application uses, the maximum number of application CPU cores. I guess I can talk about one more thing. It's also related to speed. When I open this large image and add multiple empty layers, and then I apply the colorize filter on the bottom layer, you can see that it is now slightly slower. This number here was previously showing about 120 milliseconds, and now it's more than twice the previous value. This is because what you see here is the complete image containing all layers. For example, when I draw an ellipse in this layer, then return here, I can still change the colorize value of this on this layer, but all these layers here are placed over it, and when they are merged, we of course have to read the values from the memory, from the bottom layer and the top layer, and then we have to write the result back to memory. So I can draw multiple shapes into different layers. I'm just drawing something into each layer. And when I return here to the colorize filter, you can see that it is still relatively fast, but it's slowing down. We are now on 300 milliseconds when I need to redraw the canvas. But if you count correctly, and I can also draw into this layer, the time is not increasing as fast as you would expect. The application is able to smartly combine and cache layers that are not changing, and so the editing of such large images is still relatively fast. You can try the same thing in the GIMP. We cancel this and add a couple of layers. I hope I will not run out of memory, and because that could be problematic. If the stream for some reason stops, then maybe I exceeded the amount of memory I have. So what can I do with these layers? I can possibly draw something into them. Okay, and let's see how fast it is to colorize the bottom layer in GIMP. You can see that it is visually slower than it was before. It takes, I would say, more than 1 second, and that is because all the layers have to be combined. And it seems that GIMP is not using any kind of smart pre-computation of non-changing layers. So we should have a small advantage here. Okay. So be very careful with this latest build. I have to say again that there may be problems, some bugs I don't know about, and if you find one of them, please let me know. And I think I will keep working on this, on the same stuff in the following 3 weeks, and hopefully the next time this phase will be completed. All the styles will be optimized and will be able to use multiple cores. And I hope these vector styles will be much more usable. So if there are no questions, I will end this stream and see you again in 3 weeks.